teachings of Jesus, which come out of the Emerald Tablets. You've never read the Emerald Tablets. You've never read any of these things. And so your only base source of knowledge is a concordance and a modern day Bible, which is an absolute joke. An absolute joke. An absolute joke. It can be pulled apart, torn apart, and broken down within just a few minutes.
By Compendium of the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson.
So I consider that the so-called black people of the West are actually the Jews of the scripture. And, you know, it's a weird thing in my life because I was always taught that these people from Europe were Jews. And so, you know, you're looking one direction, you're not. But then when you start looking at, like, you know, first you go like, well, are they ethnically Jew? You know, and you look for that, right? And I think the best argument for the ethnicity of their Jewish heritage is the old maps, the old sailors' maps have the interior of West Africa named Judaland, and there's a couple other things that are very Hebrew tribe related. A lot of people contend that the Ibu tribe of Africa that's just really a variation of the word Hebrew. So those are points to be made, perhaps anecdotal, because I think as I've looked into the blood path, like, it's hard to follow on either side. And so I don't want to contend against the European Jewish people, right? Like, if they are a fulfillment of Noah's prophecy, we don't want to treat them the way that Ham treated Noah, right? If these are the children of Japheth dwelling in the tents of Shem, when Noah said that, he was saying they would dwell safely, right? That Shem and Japheth are brothers. So I believe that there's something redemptive to this thing. And so when I look at the black Hebrew, what is solid for me, I think about God's character. I think about the character of God. I think about the evidence of the scripture. I think about what Yahweh says to Moses when he says, surely I've heard the groaning of my people, knowing that this people have groaned. In that same way, the groan of being the captive, right? Being this whole system is parasitic to this one people and keeping this people down. And then you wonder, well, how can you get value from putting another person down? Well, it just is proof that people have value. And specifically, when you talk about the Hebrew people, I think that would also say that, you know, the record of the Hebrew race, do we need to know the blood ethnicity of the Hebrews? I don't know. But when I look at the way that the Jew of the scripture, the way the Hebrews of the scripture were treated, this people has been treated that way. And what it says of the people in Deuteronomy 28, that if they rejected his law, what would happen to them? That has happened to this people. Read that, Deuteronomy 28. It says that they would be taken on ships into Egypt again and be placed in bondage, and no one would redeem them. That has happened to this people. You know, like, it's over and over. And so you're like, you start asking the question, like, do you mean to tell me that God's not going to help this people because they're not Jews, even though the system has treated them 100% as if they were? And you don't think the God that delivered captives out of Egypt isn't near to this people? I tell you, they are special to him. And I'll tell you, I was thinking about this as I was coming in, that the idea that the system that enslaved them could then liberate them just is not true. Really, what I think we need in this life is the prophetic eyesight to get out of the way, right? Yahweh is doing an act of deliverance. And I also would say, as part of the black-white equation, I would argue that is the Jew-Gentile equation. That's the same dilemma, that the Jew was black, right? We know that the people that are here that came on ships from West Africa, we call them black, but they're not black, they're brown, because black isn't about the color of the skin. Black is about polarizing the ruling class from the slave class, right? And so when the scripture talks about the dividing wall between Jew and Gentile, the Jew was the slave. When the Jew rejected Yahweh, the story was they would go back into bondage. And wait, right? Groan for what a time, right? We know that the scripture tells us that it was 430 years. It says 400 once, and then it says 430. So, but still a deliverer, and we see that the scripture talks about some sort of an exodus, right? And one, even Moses said, one would come like him.
Remember that.
Allow me to ask you a question, gentle strangers. Have you ever wondered why the early white Christian church didn't include the book of Enoch in the Bible? I mean, it is and was common knowledge the Israelites believed the book of Enoch was basically a part of their collection of holy writings. It was found within the Dead Sea Scroll and was quoted by those who are within the Bible. So why didn't they allow it in? I have a theory to the reason why. See, nothing is new under the sun. And just like the book of Maccabees tells us the Greeks tried to whitewash the images of the people in the Tanakh, the white Christian leaders were doing the exact same thing, but even deeper. Everybody should know that yes, the white man has added and deleted from the book we call the Bible. Get over it. All in an effort to mask who the true Israelites are, and more importantly, mask who they truly are. Though they would love to use the birth of Noah as a platform to say Yah and the angels was white, they knew a smart aleck nigger from the future would look at the story differently. Let me explain. When you read the birth of Noah in the book of Enoch, it says Noah was born with white skin and hair, with brilliant blue eyes. Surely if this was all to the story, we would hear about the book of Enoch and Noah just like we hear about the misinterpretations about King David being white. But we don't, do we? The reason is because what is written in the detail of the story. See, they understood the Greek makes it crystal clear that in the book of Jude, the term for habitation, archatorian, refers to their heavenly bodies from which they had to disrobe their covering so they could copulate with these fine black earth chicks. What am I talking about, you ask? Probably the first mama's baby's daddy's maybe situation. Enoch 105, 3 through 12. And you know my style, I'm going to skip. And when he was taken from the hand of the midwife, he's talking about Noah, opening also his mouth, he spoke unto the Lord of righteousness. Then Lamech, his father, was afraid of him, and flying away came unto his own father Methuselah, and said, I have begotten a son, unlike to other children. He is not a human, but resembling the offspring of the angels of heaven. He is a different nature from our being altogether unlike us. His eyes are bright as the rays of the sun. They have blue eyes. His countenance is glorious, and he looks not as if he belonged to me, but to the angels. We're going to keep going. And now, my father, hear me. For my son Lamech, a child has been born, who resembles not him, and whose nature is not like the nature of man. His color is whiter than snow. He is redder than the rose. His hair, the hair of his head is whiter than white wool. His eyes are like the rays of the sun. I'm going to keep going. His father Lamech feared and fled to me, believing not that the child belonged to him, but that he resembled the angels of heaven. Example. Do you guys see the obvious problems? 1. This proves all normal people on the earth had dark skin, eyes, and hair because Noah didn't look like anyone in his family or surroundings. Simply put, Noah was the first albino child. We know this is true because he continued to carry the parents' dominant DNA genes to pass on to his darker skinned Ham, Shem, and now scientists will admit, dark-skinned Japheth. But number 2 is what I like to call the big fig Newton. Did you guys notice who Lamech said Noah looked like? The fallen watchers and their children. I know the white man wants to say this proves the angels were white, but please understand, Lamech said Noah resembled the angels of heaven and not the angels in heaven, meaning the angels had already disrobed Octarian and were in their fallen state upon the earth. These lines up perfectly and seamlessly with the Tanakh, genetics, and history's rendition of where white skin came from. I'll put that link of that video in the descriptions. The book of Enoch is clear. The only people who had a white skin and blonde hair on earth were the fallen angels and their seed, the tear. Now can you see why the white man said, oh, hell no, to the book of Enoch?